This is the temple Preah Khan. Preah Khan, 12th century, built by Jayavarman VII. It's a huge temple, largely unrestored, and they've deliberately decided not to fabricate what it might have looked like. So they've only restored it to the point where it's safe for us to go through. Around the outside of the temple there are 72 very large Garudas, each 50 meters apart. So we walk into the northern entrance of the temple. It's not the main entrance. The Garuda, and we walk along the causeway where the warriors are supporting it as we cross the moat. Most temples are surrounded by moats. We'll have a look down here. Beautiful moat, beautiful green colours. And one of the heads that are still remaining, you'll notice that many of the heads have gone. Some of them have been deliberately cut off in previous wars. You can see they're quite a clean cut on the head. And we'll go into the temple through the northern Gopura. It's got 3 towers, and if you look at the top of the towers, you've got lotuses on the tops of the towers, which is a common feature of many of the temples. Surrounding the temple on the walls we have 72 of these very big Garudas. 72. Each of them are 50 meters apart. We've actually walked along the wall as far as we can, and they're in various levels of decay. The little triangular things up on the top of the wall, they used to have Buddha images in them, and at one point the Hindu kings decided that they needed to remove all of the Buddha images. Of course, the country again is now Buddhist. So just to give you an idea of the size of each of these Garudas, here's Kathy standing in front of one. So there's the Garuda, which is a central point, and then you've got the Nagas down by Kathy's elbow. So this is the entrance we've just come through. It's actually the Gopura, it's not the temple, it's just like an entrance gate. But you can see the elaborate carving all over it. Nagas, the lotus up the top, and apsaras in the walls, and back through one of the doorways to the walkway across the moat. Just a beautiful little shot of the northern entrance from inside the temple wall. Just beautiful. As we walk down towards the main temple, which is quite big. So walking into the north entrance, a couple of lions each side, as well as smaller Garudas and Nagas. Over the moonstone steps, along the walkway, up to the entrance, which is guarded by warriors. Most of the temples, all you'll see are the feet of the warriors, and the warriors themselves have been taken away, either stolen or for restoration. Look at the size of this guy's feet. No head though. So a lot of the temples have warriors at the entrance, guarding the entrance. And up above, the sign of a lot of carving inside the temple. cruciform in shape, so we're going in through the north. This heads through to the south, and then in the middle where there's an altar you can move east or west. So inside we're looking across at the third wall. In the middle, lots more rubble, so there must have been more buildings as well. Still heading into the centre. Off on the side there are courtyards, and each of these courtyards are well decorated as well. As we head to the very centre of the temple, the axis point, we see in the middle a large stupa. The stupa was added about 500 years after it was first built. And sometimes during the day the sun looks beautiful on this stupa. So around the stupa on these walls, you'll notice a lot of holes. They weren't used in the construction of the temple or putting together. In fact, all of the sandstone was covered in brass. So these were the peg holes, if you like, for all the brass that surrounded this central point in the temple. And now we'll head out towards the west gate. So we've really just come in from the north to the centre, and now we'll head out to the west gate. But again, just if you look all around us, this must have been a beautiful, bright and shiny place with all of this covered in brass. Above the doorways they always tell a story, and this is obviously a battle of some sort. See the big wheels, see people with a bit of hand-to-hand combat there on the ground. Elephant. Many images like these in the temples, you can see they're quite deeply carved. Until even recently, people will come along in the middle of the night and cut these out and steal them. There's a bit more security around the temples today, but it's only recently that people were still stealing such works. One of the small temples within, you can see again the false doors. Remember, there's 3 false doors and 1 real door. Much of the temple is still like this, in absolute ruins. It's deliberately decided not to restore some of the temple, leave it standing as it is. So some areas are quite inaccessible. It's a very big temple, and it is said that it housed up to 100,000 servants and bureaucrats. You can just imagine all the people rushing around in here. And just as we saw in the outer temple where we had the large stone statue of a warrior, here is one of the warriors on an internal wall, and there's one on each side of the doorway. This is looking inwards from the western entrance. We're walking out towards the western gate. This is known as the Hall of Dancers. There's another famous one at Preah Khan. So wide open space, but what you'll look for and notice are the carvings on the wall of dancers. So the Apsara dances are depicted through this space, and they say it's the hall of the dancers. A beautiful lintel with some more of the dancers, and the carved out images up the top that would have had Buddha in them before they were removed. Looking back into Preah Khan, one of the outer walls, you see that the trees that have overgrown here, we've had to cut them down because the trees have been very destructive. So they cut them down and they leave the roots there for us to see just how big they were. And a rather impressive structure with columns, 2-storey and big round columns, something we don't normally see in the temples. I think it might have been a library. Again, on the outside you can still see holes in the sandstone blocks, so this whole area still would have been adorned with pressed metal. So this is the eastern entrance to Preah Khan. The other side of the wall where that massive tree was, they've actually cut down in order to protect the temple from crumbling further. And we look around into the other side and we've got the Apsara staff who are all cutting back the vegetation, which would be a constant job. There would have been lotus flowers on the top of each of these towers, and down on the ground there are some remnants of the big sandstone lotus towers. And outside of the third wall, looking back in at the 2-storey structure that they believe was a library with a fantastic huge columns which you don't see at a lot of the temples in Cambodia.